Father Gabriel was known for his devotion, but lately, there was something keeping him awake at night. Psalm 91. Although he had recited those words hundreds of times throughout his life, something in the phrase, 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you, deeply disturbed him. He felt that there was a hidden message, something that centuries of interpretation had not unveiled. He couldn't shake the idea that those words held a secret, a coded message for those who could read it. Thus Gabriel's nights filled with obsessive studies, analyzing ancient texts and forgotten versions of the Bible, convinced that the psalm spoke to him directly, like a call that only he could hear. Father Gabriel spent countless hours in the church library, surrounded by dusty old tomes and forgotten scrolls. One day, while exploring the oldest archives of the church, he found a yellowed parchment that seemed to have been deliberately hidden. The words on the parchment were written in strange Latin, and at first glance they appeared to be simple verses from a forgotten hymn. However, as he compared certain passages with Psalm 91, Gabriel began to notice a different structure, as if they were designed to be read together. With each line, he felt something profound was being revealed. As he deciphered the code, Gabriel discovered a series of numbers and a date, November 13th, 2024, a reference to an event that would change the fate of humanity. The verses spoke of the night when light will descend upon the righteous and reveal what lies hidden. The language was enigmatic, but Father Gabriel felt he had found the key he had been seeking. Convinced that this date contained an apocalyptic message, he decided to prepare a special mass for the indicated night, hoping that the mystery would be unveiled. But a part of him feared what he might discover when that day arrived. With the date of November 13th approaching, Father Gabriel immersed himself in preparations for the midnight mass. The sense of urgency kept him on edge, and each passing day made him more obsessive about the details. He adjusted the altar candles to form an ancient symbol he had found on the parchment, a circle with unknown inscriptions that he believed would channel the energy of the revelation. As he carefully arranged the candlesticks and decorated the altar with purple cloth, he murmured prayers under his breath, hoping that these actions would set the stage for whatever was to happen. The few parishioners who still attended the church noticed his change. Some whispered about the strange intensity in his gaze, but Gabriel barely paid them any mind. His mind was focused on the approaching night, on the possibility of a discovery that would change not only his life, but the fate of all. He even began sharing visions of light and shadows in his sermons, the duality of faith and what lies beyond human understanding. His words unsettled the listeners, but no one dared confront him. The rumor of a special midnight mass began to spread, and although few understood the reason, curiosity would lead them to witness what was about to unfold. Gabriel just hoped to be prepared for what was to come, and as he gazed at the illuminated altar, he prayed that his interpretations were correct. The night of November 13th, 2024, arrived, and an unsettling calm enveloped the church. Father Gabriel adjusted his cassock, glancing at himself in the vestibule mirror before heading to the altar. The candlelight created dancing shadows on the stone walls, while the few parishioners who dared to attend sat in silence, wondering what made this midnight mass so special. Gabriel could feel their curious and fearful gazes, but his attention was entirely focused on the altar and the ancient symbol he had arranged with such care. The church was nearly in darkness, illuminated only by the dim light of the candles and the pale blue glow filtering through the stained glass, as if the moon itself wished to witness what was about to unfold. Gabriel began the Mass by reciting Psalm 91, but this time with a passion and intensity that echoed in the church's walls. As he pronounced the words, the candles flickered, as if the air vibrated with something invisible, a presence that grew stronger by the moment. Then it happened. As he reached the final lines of the psalm, a wave of energy coursed through the church. The lights began to flicker, and the ground beneath the altar trembled slightly. The parishioners exchanged nervous glances, but no one dared to move. Suddenly, the large wooden crucifix above the altar began to emit an intense blue glow, casting long and distorted shadows across the church. The stained glass vibrated violently, as if a strange power sought to break through reality itself. Gabriel continued reciting, now with a trembling voice, as he felt something else surrounding him, something he had both hoped for and feared. Out of nowhere, an ethereal bluish figure began to materialize above the altar, a humanoid being made of pure light, its contours blurring and reforming like a faulty hologram. The parishioners screamed. Some dashed for the exit, but the church doors slammed shut, as if an invisible force held them closed. Gabriel, however, remained steadfast in front of the apparition, his eyes locked on the figure floating above the symbol he had set. The moment of revelation had arrived, and the church filled with an electric hum that promised to change everything. The ethereal figure hovered above the altar, emitting a dark and threatening glow that distorted the shadows within the church. Father Gabriel felt a chill run down his spine as the entity manifested, a being seemingly composed of shadows and flickering dim light. Instead of bringing peace and revelation, it emanated a malevolent presence that seemed to drain the hope from the place. With a guttural sound, the figure began to communicate with Gabriel, not through soft words, but via a torrent of thoughts that invaded his mind. "You have awakened what should have remained asleep." It resonated in his head, a dark warning. Gabriel felt his heart race as he realized that his research and obsessions had attracted something dangerous, something that had been patiently waiting in the darkness. Paralyzed by terror, Gabriel watched as the entity twisted and turned, projecting visions of chaos and destruction onto the church walls. Cities in flames, skies filled with electric storms, and creatures emerging from the shadows to devour everything in their path. The atmosphere became oppressive, and the echo of a thunderous roar resonated within the church, like the heartbeat of a malevolent force. Gabriel understood that he had unleashed something that threatened not only his life, but the very existence of humanity. Despite the horror, a part of him still felt the allure of that dark power, the temptation of forbidden knowledge. With a choked scream, Gabriel attempted to recite a prayer, seeking divine protection, but his voice barely reached above the entity's roar. He knew he had to act quickly to contain what he had unleashed, yet terror paralyzed him. The figure approached, and in its empty gaze, Gabriel saw the reflection of his own guilt. He had sought answers without considering the consequences. Gabriel stood frozen, trapped in the darkness emanating from the entity, feeling his faith fade in the face of the terror he had unleashed. The echo of the roar reverberated in his ears as visions of destruction danced before his eyes. The altar, once a symbol of hope, now appeared to be the epicenter of an impending storm. The parishioners, filled with panic, began to scream and search for exits. Some knelt, pleading with God to save them, while others pushed and jostled against the closed doors. Gabriel, sensing the weight of responsibility for his congregation, forced himself to regain composure. "Listen, don't give up. We must unite our voices," he shouted, trying to instill courage in them. However, the entity seemed to feed off their desperation. Every scream of fear, every prayer choked by panic, strengthened its dark power. Gabriel could feel the energy of the faith among them fading, as if it were being absorbed into nothingness. The figure writhed and vibrated, manifesting a grotesque face that fed on the collective anguish. The air thickened, suffused with overwhelming sadness. The church lights began to flicker, and dark mist spread its tendrils, wrapping around the parishioners in a chilling embrace. What is faith? The entity's voice resonated in their minds, an illusion that will soon vanish. Your faith is my sustenance, and today I shall be sated. Gabriel felt his heart sink as he watched despair seize his congregation. Those who had once clung to faith now fell to their knees, their gazes hollow, as if every spark of hope had been extinguished. "What have we done?" whispered one of the parishioners, their voice broken. Gabriel realized that in his quest for answers, he had unleashed something that not only threatened their lives, but left them without faith and purpose. With every psalm recited, the entity grew stronger, mocking Gabriel's attempts to counter it. The roar of the being echoed like thunder, and Gabriel felt his own faith wavering. "You cannot save them," the entity murmured, as if it knew what was passing through his mind. "I am the truth, hidden in shadows, and tonight I will consume their faith." As the church filled with cries of desperation and sobs, Gabriel understood that he had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The light of hope that once shone in his heart was extinguishing, leaving only darkness and desolation. The ethereal figure faded in an explosion of shadows, leaving those present in a state of emotional devastation and hopelessness. As Gabriel fell to his knees, feeling that he had brought not only his ruin, but that of all who had believed in him. And you, would you dare to play with unknown forces? Subscribe for more unsettling tales.